Blake, have you ever had a monkey eat all of your prescription medication? I can't even get through that without laughing.
I told you to stop talking about my cats like that, Toby. They're not monkeys.
Welcome to the Church Gear Podcast, where we pull the tech director out of the booth and onto the stage to share the most outlandish stories and hidden wisdom from the tech trenches. And now, here are your hosts.
I'm your host, Blake Hodges, a man who spoke too much to border control the one time I left the country on foot, and I'm here with my co-host, a man who could sweet talk his way past any security guard ever, Toby Walters.
Now I'm trying to think if I've ever sweet talked my way past security guards.
I'm sure you have at some point. I mean, even if it was just to prove that you could.
I've done this before, and my wife was sitting next to me, so I feel like it's okay, but I've flirted with waitresses in order to get free dessert.
Ooh, man, I don't know about that one. That's,
Well, she's appreciated because she's enjoying the free dessert with me.
You know what? I guess it says in second hesitations, if thou get free deserteth with the wife's approval.
Wow.
Is blessed.
That's a real stretch. Nice try.
People should turn us off right now.
So going back to this monkey eating prescription medication. So my best friend from growing up, from first grade, he went to, now I'm forgetting the country, but he went over to Africa. And part of going to Africa, if you're an American citizen, is you got to get vaccines and certain medicines to have, because there's all sorts of different germs and diseases floating around Africa than what we're used to. So my buddy had to take over, I think it was just penicillin. It was just generic, what are those things? Antibiotics.
Yeah.
Words are hard.
He take it in a jar, or did he take it beforehand? Or?
So I don't know if it was in a pill bottle with, like, you know, the childproof cap.
Okay.
But he said a monkey broke into his tent and ate all of his penicillin.
Oh my gosh. Did the monkey die? Is he eating this monkey for dinner now?
I'm thinking it's like a super monkey now that's, you know, protected against all diseases ever because he's got all these antibiotics in him.
That's definitely the monkey in Tarzan.
Definitely. So I'm transitioning, but I'm sticking with a theme, but I have to go backwards in this story in order to tell the full thing. So I am very much a believer in mentorship and leadership. Like, wiser, older men and women have so much to offer to help us on our journey. So in our company, Church Gear, I am very animate about reaching out to older men and women who have been there before, started businesses, been, you know, experienced in ministry, to give me wisdom and thoughts. So we have a business mentor, our good friend, Mr. Giggy. And Blake, you know the story, but it was so fun. Mr. Giggy went to Uganda to help with a mission organization out there that he does some partnership with. And so when he came back and he was sitting with us the next time, he told us the story of him in Uganda. And so he said, he showed us some pictures of this school that they had built over there and just talked about the ministry they were doing. And it was so exciting to hear. And then he showed us these pictures of these young Ugandan boys sort of standing around something that was in front of them. Like, at first,
wasn't it a Mackie mixing board?
No.
I really thought it was. Okay.
Oh, maybe. Well, no, I highly doubt it. So what he said is he's showing these pictures of these young boys learning something. And he said, you know, here's a gentleman they're learning from. His name is Wally. And Wally is, Mr. Giggy is not an audio nerd by any level or means, but he said, I think Wally's like teaching them audio editing. And so he thought it was so cool that that Wally was teaching these things to them. And so after Wally was done with his training, he went up to him and started just up a conversation. And Mr. Giggy said, I don't know anything about tech or audio or whatever, but I work with this company in Nashville.
That's how I introduced myself as well. I don't know anything about audio or tech, but I work with this company in Nashville.
100% true. So he said, I work with this company out of Nashville that they buy used production equipment from churches all over. And Wally said, wait a second, I know that company. You're talking about Church Gear.
My little branded heart just grew 5 sizes bigger.
I know. I think we all, like, our mouths dropped, and then we like did a conga dance for like the next 4 hours that somebody has heard of us in Africa.
Yeah, I mean, that was so cool. I mean, we're just this little scrappy startup in Franklin, Tennessee, but they've heard about us all over the world now.
Yep. And I think it was mostly like, yes, I've heard of that company. I think they do something with production gear, but don't they have this sort of idiot that does a podcast that doesn't know anything about tech or audio?
Yeah, I'm the village idiot here in Franklin, Tennessee. So, all right. Speaking though of someone who's definitely not an idiot, I'd like to bring in.
Well, we haven't proven that yet. We'll find out.
That was a hard transition. I'm a big sucker for a segue, but bringing in the former director of audio at Saddleback Church, as well as the former senior consulting and client development at Clark,
and the Wally,
presently family mentor at the Amazima School, Wally Grant. Wally, thanks for joining us, man.
Well, thanks for having me. I appreciate it.
So, Wally, is the story I told, is that like the accurate version? Because I'm hearing it secondhand, but you are that Wally that was training these young Ugandan boys.
I am that Wally. We have, here at the school, we have clubs every Tuesday. And that club that I run is called the Production Club. And actually what we were doing is we were running a virtual sound check. And the council was a Allen Heath SQ5. And so these boys were mixing this virtual sound check. Now these are kids that they don't know anything. And
like Blake.
Yes, it's okay. We understand that realm.
I think if you want to come, Blake, and join the club, you're welcome to visit anytime.
I could write that under my business expenses. Toby would not notice weekly flights.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. You just call it like on-the-job training. You're going to fly to Uganda. Yeah. Wally's going to train you in virtual sound check not on a Mac keyboard, though. I'm sorry, Blake.
Yes, no, it's a digital console, and so that these guys are amazing. They are. These guys have no background. Most of us who have gotten into church audio kind of have a little bit of background just because of our place where we live and things like that. But these guys, all they know here in Uganda is it doesn't matter if it's distorted, just as long as it's loud.
That's kind of like Blake's voice.
Oh, yes. I was about to he beat me to that one. Okay, so Wally, you've got a lot of great accomplishments, but we also hear that you're a liar. We heard you're going to lie to us on the show. Is that true?
My wife may say that, yeah.
Okay, so I'm going to read out your 5 truths and a lie, and we'll try to see if we can guess it. Number 1, I was a sound supervisor for a horror film company. Number 2, I had a very interesting conversation with Bob Dillon backstage at the Grammys.
Dang.
I hope that one's true.
Yes.
Number 3, I used the Oval Office bathroom.
Does the Oval Office have a bathroom? I mean, it makes sense, but you never see it in the movies.
I mean, all the people that are in there are, 80 years old, and those people have to pee a lot. So it makes sense to, I'm talking both parties here, as they're all old by the time they make it to the office. All right, number 4, I was a pioneer in contemporary Christian music before it was even known as contemporary Christian music.
Don't call it contemporary Christian music, because when we were rehearsing this, you said, what the heck is CCM?
Toby, if you tell them the things you've taught me, I look less cool. Number 5, I did front of house for the Kennedy Center Honors. And number 6, I did sound design on BattleBots.
BattleBots.
Okay, Wally, I'm going to tell you, when we were making your outline, I was like, how do we write questions for him? All we're going to want to do is talk about his truths and a lie, because these are pretty cool. I am going to say you do look like the fun-loving guy that would do sound design for BattleBots and the horror film. I bet the Oval Office bathroom was biz. Well, that's too specific.
I feel like it's either I'm going to go with the horror film company, just because I feel like it seems like an obvious one that he would have that in his background. I feel like, the Bob Dillon and the Oval Office, the Kennedy Center, these are all things he threw in there because they're so cool.
Gosh. Yeah, I mean, I think that as a movie guy, that's really cool. This is really tough. I'm going to split the difference. That way we increase our odds of winning. And I'm going to say it wasn't Bob Dillon. Maybe you had a conversation with someone else at the Grammys. So I'm going to say Grammys. Toby is going horror film.
What is it, Wally?
Well, those are both true.
Ah.
So instead of increasing our odds, I just guaranteed we both missed it. Which one's the lie?
The lie is the Kennedy Center Honors.
Okay, well, that's good because that's the one I didn't really care about that one. I was like, I really want to talk about the Oval Office and Bob Dylan.
Tell us about taking a leak at the Oval Office.
Well, was it number one or number two?
Well, as we would say in Uganda, it was a short call.
A short call.
Okay.
In Uganda, they will tell you, I'm going to go take a short call, or I'm going to go take a long call.
Ha! That's amazing.
Love it.
I'm going to start using that.
So it was a short call. And so this goes back, this is when Carter was president. And one of the artists, I'm an old guy. I just turned 69. And so an artist that I worked with in my beginning, and you guys, I know Blake will not know about this. But
no.
Toby, you may know about it.
Mm-hmm.
You may know about it. But was a gospel artist named Andre Crouch and the Disciples.
Oh, sure.
And so we did I think it was 77, February of 77 is Black History Month. And so we did a concert at the White House. And it was us, B.B. King, and Evelyn Champagne King. So anyway, because I was doing sound, I had to have a Secret Service guy assigned to me. So I did, and this was a young guy, probably mid to late 20s. And so we had a lot of time to spare. And Carter wasn't even there. He was gone someplace. So the guy said, hey, you want to go see the Oval Office? I said, sure, I'd like to go see the Oval Office. And then he said, that's the bathroom over there. Do you want to use it? I go, I do have to pee. And so I did a short call in the Oval Office. And Toby, not knowing that you don't remember your history too well, I think, because if you remember the Clinton era and Monica Lewinsky.
Oh.
The bathroom in the Oval Office was prevalent in that story.
See, I was in middle school during the Clinton era, so...
You think Toby's mom let him listen to the news talking about Monica Lewinsky?
Blake, if you use the Oval Office, I guarantee you would have forced out a long call.
Oh, I would have done a long call, and I wouldn't have flushed, regardless of who was in there. No, I'm just kidding. Respect the office of the presidency. That's cool. That tells me that story that was that guy's move. Like, he was like, you know what? I might not be president, but I can show you the president's bathroom, so I'm going to do it. That's fun.
Obviously, would not happen today.
Yo, totally not.
No.
Okay, well then tell us about your interesting conversation with Bob Dylan backstage at the Grammys.
So at the Grammys, it was when Bob Dylan's Slow Train Coming album came out, his first Christian album. And so Andre was also playing the Grammys. And I was backstage and Bob saw my Andre Crouch jacket. And he says, hey, I won't try to do a Bob Dylan imitation because I can't. But he said, hey, come here. I want to talk to you. And he said, and we talked, he asked me my name and we talked a little bit. And he said, I have a question for you. Is Andre wearing a tuxedo tonight? If Andre wears a tuxedo, I'm going to wear a tuxedo. And that was my interesting conversation with Bob.
And did either of them wear a tux?
No, neither of them wore a tux.
And of course, we have to ask, Blake, do you know who Bob Dylan is?
Yes, in the sense that I know that is the name of an artist. I didn't know that he did Christian music, though. I know he's like, isn't he kind of in the pantheon of like, the Beatles, Rolling Stones? Like, isn't he kind of as cool as those guys?
He was almost like he laid the groundwork for the Beatles and the Rolling Stones to be who they were.
What? He goes back before them? Okay.
Absolutely.
I mean, same time frame, but he was like the pioneer of songwriting and rock music.
And he did it all with two first names. Bob and Dylan. That's pretty impressive.
Wow. That was definitely his biggest handicap, having two first names.
I mean, it doesn't have like a regal last name to lean on. Okay, so you were also the sound supervisor for a horror film company. Give us some of those details.
I was. It was called Full Moon Productions, and I'm not a horror film fanatic at all. People who are horror film fanatics, they're crazy. That's all they think about. Blake, are you a horror film fanatic?
I'm a big movie fan, big movie critic. And yes, horror, it's not my genre, but like, you're right. It is literally its own subgenre. They have their own streaming service. Most people don't know about. It's called Shudder. I know this because one of my brother-in-laws is a big horror fan. And so we buy him that subscription service every year for Christmas. Like, it's a big deal. Like that is a whole
Yeah.
community. Halloween does
Yeah.
not, come and go in October. They watch horror films all year.
So this company that I work for, I just wanted to get my foot in the door on doing audio for film, sound design and that. And there's a horror film out called Phantasm, which is a holy grail horror film. So the guy who made that film was a guy named Don Coscarelli. Don and I went to high school, and I literally got this job because I didn't have any experience. I literally got this job because I knew Don Coscarelli. That's all it took.
Well, they say it's about who you know.
Exactly. So the company is called Full Moon Productions. Their biggest thing that you may have heard of was a series called Puppet Master. And that was one of the big ones. But another interesting thing about it is our studios and offices were right on the corner of Hollywood and Vine.
Ooh.
And it was in a building that Howard Hughes built. And
Blake, who's Howard Hughes?
Yeah.
He is Hughes of the Howard. See, but Hughes is a real last name. That's what I'm talking about right there. There we go.
So Howard Hughes, this building, Howard Hughes was a recluse, Blake, that was very, very, very rich. And so there was an elevator in the back of this building that was big enough for his Cadillac. And Cadillac would go up to the 10th floor, and the halls were built big enough so he could drive his Cadillac around the 10th floor.
He was straight up crazy. Blake, if you want a little Howard Hughes education, Leonardo DiCaprio does play Howard Hughes in the movie The Aviator.
Yes.
I feel like I might have seen that. I might be thinking of Catch Me If You Can. I did just watch all three Back to the Futures.
And I wanted to give you the opportunity to endear yourself back to our audience who you told many months ago that the first Top Gun wasn't that great.
Look, Top Gun 2 is better than Top Gun 1. You can fight me on it. I mean, everyone's saying it.
But tell everyone what you just watched.
Just watched all three Back to the Futures in the past 4 days.
And what did you think?
I saw that on your Instagram.
Yeah, I actually think the first one is incredible.
It is incredible.
Typically, nostalgia doesn't hold. It doesn't keep. Like when you hype a movie up, by the time I see it and it's older, it's not as good. The first one was incredibly economical. Like every single thing they set up, they paid off. And then I think I actually benefited from not having too much love for it because I really enjoyed 2 and 3, even though people were like, that first one's the best. They get bad as they go. I thought they were all really good. So... Okay, Wally.
Speaking of Back to the Future.
Yeah, let's get back to the podcast. Okay, so looking at your background, I mean, we stalk all of our guests before they come on the show to make up some good questions. And man, your background is extensive. You went from Saddleback to Clark. Some of the biggest churches we talked to in the country, they keep talking about Clark as their integrator. So we're kind of wondering, what deal with the devil? I mean, Jesus, did you have to make to... do they have to make to work with so many churches? So tell us about your time at Clark and why they're so great.
Well, I mean, Clark is great. I mean, to follow my true history from that point, I mean, Saddleback was maybe halfway through my history, but there was 2 places in between Saddleback and Clark. I left Saddleback and went to a church in Michigan, in Grand Rapids, Michigan, and was technical director there for 3 years. And then I left the church because of illness. The church got sick of me. And,
well played.
And then I went to work for a company called Church Solutions Group in Chicago, which from Church Solutions Group, that's where Amplio came out of. Jeff Vandergiesen used to be my boss.
I got to have coffee with Vander Giesen at Philo just a few weeks ago. That guy's awesome. And yeah, he told me about, sort of Church Solutions kind of dying, and then out of the ashes rises Amplio.
I don't think kind of is a true word. It fell over dead.
Look, Church Solutions got sick as well.
Yes.
Yes. Yeah, exactly. And then now I'm without a job. And in Grand Rapids, Michigan, which is not a lot of work for what I do. And so, but after about 2 months, I got a call from Houston Clark out of the blue. I'd never met Houston before. And he heard that I was looking for a job. And he said, I want you to, can I call you back tomorrow so you can talk to my brother, George? Houston and George started the company. Clark, a little history for Clark. Clark started at North Point Church. George was on staff there. And when they built their first sanctuary, George didn't think that people were doing things well. And so he asked Andy Stanley if he could do it. And Andy said yes. And so that's where Clark was birthed at. So he said, I'm going to call you tomorrow, and I want you to talk to my brother and to Todd Austin, who is the CEO there. And I said, sure. He calls me, and then we talk. He calls me 3 hours later. Can you fly to Atlanta on Monday? I said, sure, but I have to be back on Tuesday or on Wednesday because I was going to Minneapolis to interview with another company, which was at that time owned by Stefan Schward, who has whatever the name of the company is now. The LED screens and that. I can't think of the company now. Thor.
Blake, do you know the company?
Yeah, it's the ABC company.
Yeah. And so I got down to Clark, and the second I started interviewing, I knew that was going to be the place for me.
Oh, why is that?
Clark. Well, it was just, it was casual. It was friendly. It was, George Clark, for example, is an incredibly smart guy. But he just comes off as a good old guy. And so I went to work for Clark. And why Clark has the big, one of the things I went to work for Clark with was to help him get past the reputation that Clark was very expensive because we only work with big churches and that. And so my job was to go after, help the smaller churches. And Clark is no more expensive than any other of the large companies. But because it worked with North Point and Willow Creek and Saddleback now and all these, they get the reputation, they must charge a lot.
Totally. So
and
then
actually,
if you were working with a ton of small churches, we work with a lot of small churches ourselves. Like, what were some of the things you were seeing commonly there, like their struggles or solutions?
Well, their struggles were what they could afford. And so one of the things that I did is we created what we called engineered box sales. And what that was is, so if you do a typical project with the Clark, you have 12 people working for you. You have engineers, you have designers, if you do a deal with me, you got me. And so I did all the design. I went in and supervised the installations. So all those things help cut costs. The less salaries you have to pay, the less costs. And we did some great projects. And then along with that, I handled all the box sales, kind of what you guys are doing at Church Gear, just the gear sales.
That's awesome. I love, I feel like we could spend 2 hours just like figuring out the arc of your career path from, horror film company to short call in the Oval Office, all the way to Saddleback and Clark. And so now you are over in Uganda with the Amazima School and Ministries. We actually have, so churchgear.com was built by the same guy that built the Amazima web presence. And then, we have a lot of mutual just friends in the area since Katie came from Brentwood, Tennessee.
Exactly.
So, tell us about, your storied career. And now tell us what you're doing at the Amazima School out there.
So step back a little bit. How did I get to Amazima? So while working at Clark, I got a call from Kelly Miller, who was the director of student life here at the school. He had known about Clark because one of George Clark's sons was in a small group of his when he was in high school. So Kelly calls me, and basically they bought some equipment from me. And they bought a mixing board and a couple microphones and things, a projector and screen. Not a lot of stuff. But then he said, hey, would you like to come over to Uganda and help us install it and teach us how to use it? I said, well, I've wanted to go to Africa since I can remember, just never had the opportunity. And I said, I'd love to. And he said, and bring your wife with you. And so I called Joy up. My wife is Joy. I said, Joy, you want to go to Uganda with me? And her exact words were, not on my bucket list. Anyway, she did decide to come. So we came here in 2018, installed this equipment, and we came right in February, right when school started here. And so we got to meet the kids and really see this, how the school works in that. And when we got back, Joy said, that was a great trip. I'd like to go visit again sometime, but at least we're not called to live there. My wife has some great, we ask her to be careful with what she says.
Have you asked her to say, well, if only it's too bad we'll never win the lottery?
Yeah, never be billionaires.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly. So anyway, so I get back here and I'm just, this school's on my mind totally. And so we're thinking about it, and I find out it's on Joy's mind too. We were out to dinner one night, and I said, I had something I need to talk to you about. And she says, well, I have something I need to talk to you about too. And so we were talking about the same thing. And we said, we should look in to see what it means if we were to go over. And so we kept on putting it off. And I don't know why we were scared or whatever. And so we finally applied in June, I think, of 2019. And then we got accepted. And so what I do, as far as what I do over here now, my job title, as you said earlier, is family mentor. And what that means is that my wife and I live on campus. We have a house that we have 15 girls that we live at. We're in a girls' house. 15 girls, guys.
You're outnumbered, Wally.
It's an interesting situation. And but our bottom line job description is to model a biblical marriage for these kids. That's the bottom line job description. Because they don't see that there. I see that here. Fathers, that's very much in the United States. Fathers are vacant and not around. And so being in a girl's house, there are lots of things that I can't interact with them about and that, but just being here and being when they get home from school, it just makes a big difference. But also for me, like I said, I've done this production thing, this audio thing for 50 years. And that's part of me. And that's to me, one of the things I'm teaching the guys in my production club is that you are just as much a part of the worship team as the people on stage. And for me, mixing is part of my worship. That's what I have to give. And so if I couldn't do that, wherever I'm at, I don't know if I could be there. So those opportunities are here. We have put in new sound systems. I guarantee we have the best sound system of any school in Uganda. We've been blessed. One of the things that I like about your company, Church Gear, when I moved to Michigan, we had that closet.
You are not alone.
Exactly. And so what you're doing, because yes, there are mega churches, but there are hundreds of thousands of small churches.
And those churches all need to take a long call and evacuate some of that gear.
There you go.
Exactly.
Well, Wally, I want to continue the production talk, but I also want to rewind just a second. And I think this is something we've never really chatted about on the podcast, but for our tech director audience, talk a little bit about modeling a biblical marriage and just give some high level wisdom to these young, very young, often tech directors that are maybe newly married on how they can while trying to do their position well, also serve their family and their wives well at home?
That is a big question and a hard question because we know the churches can be
demanding,
demanding, but not respectful of one's time. And I have to say that these young guys who are getting into this now, it is a passion, and sometimes our passions become bigger than our life. And we forget about the day-to-day, my wife, my children. And you've heard it many times, I know, but you need to spend that time. You need to prioritize what your priorities are. And one of the things that I know about tech people is we don't like to fail. But sometimes we have to fail for people to learn, those above us, that we can't do it all. At Saddleback, when I was there, things would come like this. I mean, and we never failed. And that's one of the things that hurt us, actually.
I know when we were talking with Todd Elliott, he said his wife had a hard conversation with his pastor because she was going to go to bat for him and say, "Excuse me, Mr. Pastor, but you are monopolizing my husband's time." And the pastor's response was, "Well, your husband is a grown man, so he can come to me and let me know that I am monopolizing his time." And so, how can tech directors have those hard conversations to tell their direct leadership, look, like, I appreciate that you have this new idea every 17 seconds, but I have to protect my marriage and my family. Like, I know, tech directors are notoriously bad at having hard emotional conversations. So, what advice, wisdom do you give to have them have those hard conversations that are absolutely necessary?
Well, I think one of the important things is when they come to you, don't say no like that. Say, let me look at it, let me think about it, because then the relationship with your worship leader or whoever, the executive pastor or that, and then you can come back after, because some of these things we can't say yes or no right off the bat, but we tend to say yes. Okay, I'll take care of it. But then also for me, I think one of the reasons that I left the second church I was at is because I didn't have a problem with confrontation. And not everybody has that. If something couldn't be done, I would tell them, I just can't do it. And those are hard things that I wasn't always that way. Maturity, age kind of brings those things together.
Wally, I'm with you there because I am an 8 on the Enneagram. Conflict is my lifeblood. If there's a problem, I can't stand for it to go unaddressed. So I feel you. Although that's rare for us to see that in a tech director. Typically, they're more so on the quiet side. So you must have been a different breed for them to experience.
Well, yeah. Well, like I said, I wasn't always that way. It's something that I've learned. But also, when I first started doing this, I was doing it in a different arena because churches didn't have tech directors then. They barely had. There was some old guy who was retired usually doing the sound.
I was going to say that's what they say about Toby's dad, but I couldn't bring myself to do it.
Throw my dad under the bus.
And then there was a long pause.
So speaking of old guys, and no, I'm not making fun of you, Wally. So let's talk about, back when you first started, production value was super low. It was, like you said, usually a retired guy, and it was probably a very simple, like, mixer, a couple speakers on a stick, and a couple microphones. I think kind of one of the
speakers on a stick.
Yeah,
that's really funny.
Yeah.
They're on sticks. So one of the things that especially this day and age, people can often get off on a rabbit trail, is thinking like more, better, newer gear equals better experience, better worship, better production. Especially like with you working with Clark, specifically helping smaller churches with smaller budgets. How do you speak into that to, advise that better gear doesn't necessarily translate to greater experience with the Holy Spirit?
Well, absolutely. I mean, as far as the Holy Spirit is concerned, the Holy Spirit doesn't speak to us through speakers, or he speaks to us through his Spirit and through people. And so it is the relationships are what makes a great worship team. People are what make it. The gear, you do the best that you can, and you train and you get better. With my experience, for example, if it was the Mackie board, I could probably do better than Blake.
I don't know about that.
Anything.
Those are fighting words.
Guarantee it.
Yeah.
Bet Toby's life on it.
But the experience has a lot to do with it. But attitude, back when I first started doing this is on the lives. This was about being in CCM before CCM was CCM. It was a whole different world, and all of us that were doing it at that time. I'm not saying anything against anybody doing. It was all about evangelism. It was, we would play anywhere. We played roller skating rinks to get the message while they're skating. So they're getting the Doppler effect every time they come around. But it was, we wanted, what is the message, what we see and what we hear and what we feel, or is the message Jesus? Only Jesus. And if that's the message, whatever gear we have, we'll do what we can with it. Now, gear helps us to sound better, look better. But our main job as technical people, as sound guys, lighting guys, is not to distract, not to draw attention to ourselves. So I think my bottom line is it's people that make the difference.
So essentially, Blake would be a terrible tech director because he's always trying to get the attention onto him.
I was about, well, actually, yeah, you win at that point. I was about to say, I'd be a great tech director. I'm good with people, bad with gear.
No, I love that. Like, how do we keep the gospel message front and center? It's like, well, first of all, are you sharing the gospel message through whatever technology you have? Because if you upgrade your tech and you're still not sharing the gospel, then what's the point?
Yes, and I won't call out any churches by name on that. So
good for you, buddy.
Okay, I'm glad that you laughed at that.
So, Wally, speaking of, the gospel message, and then it doesn't, if we just say like it doesn't matter the tech, it matters the gospel. What are you seeing in Africa where, you just said, I guarantee that we have the best, like latest generation tech of any school in Africa. Like, where are you seeing the gospel just thrive in the least technically, expensive or updated locations?
Well, that's that is kind of a loaded question, because here I get to occasional churches. Because I'm on campus, we have church on campus. We have chapel on Wednesday nights, church on Sunday. So I'm here the majority of the time. People's hearts in Uganda are good. We love Uganda. Uganda is home now. When we left the States, we sold everything. We sold our house, our cars. We have a 10 by 10 storage unit. And so Uganda is home now. And one of the reasons it's home is because of the people who generally have nothing. And they're the kindest, most giving people that I've experienced. And so what I see is in the lives of our girls, I see a prayer that I've never prayed in my life. Okay. Every prayer that they say almost starts with, Lord, thank you for life today. The first time I heard that, I've never prayed that prayer ever. And they are, because of their situation, they are thankful that they have life. And then the things that go on. And they love each other. Families are, while fathers may not be as prevalent here, a nuclear family, families are very important. Families take care of families. But there's the other side of things. So what I see in the people who I live with, who I work with, is an incredible true love of Christ, and they don't have much.
Do you think especially with your time at Clark, do you think the larger tech heavy churches can often just get distracted with the tech they're never praying prayers anymore? And especially I don't want to turn this into the American reality versus the rest of the world, but oftentimes I feel like the tech can even distract the people from praying those just simple prayers of thank you, Jesus, for life today. So how can, if you're imparting wisdom to our audience of tech directors, how can you just tell them to forget about the tech, forget about Sunday service, and just pray these simple prayers of remembering who you are as a child of God?
Well, like you said, simple prayers are important. If we're looking at tech teams and worship teams, get to know your people who are on your team. Know what their children's names are. Know what the wives' names are. Know what the husband's names are. I found that sometimes in large churches, it's a job, it's a gig. And it didn't start out that way, but people just get so tired and so, it's a job. I go to work Monday or usually Tuesday through Sunday type thing. But do life with your people. We talk about it in leadership conferences and Philo, and we talk, but the rubber has to meet the road. Take that person out to coffee. You hear about somebody who's hurting, be that person who goes and helps them. Like I say, it's all about people. Gear is just the icing on top for me.
See, and that's what I keep telling Toby. I'm like, we can put some icing on this cupcake. It's just the gear. It doesn't matter. I don't know it.
You've literally never said that before in your life, but nice try.
Until this moment. So, Wally, we like to use a tech takeaway.
I had one more question I wanted to ask Wally. And I know I'm interrupting you. I'm sorry, Blake.
Look,
I'll take you to coffee after this and learn about your cat's names because you don't have kids.
Yeah. Before we hit record, you literally said, I need some introvert time from you after this episode before our next one.
So, Wally, one other question is, and maybe this is too big a question to answer for you, but are there specific ways that the American church, especially ones with a lot of resources, can support ministries in other countries and missions that are thriving? What are just some very practical ways that our churches can support you and other ministries out there?
Well, like Church Gear is doing for churches, gear is very expensive here. It's very expensive. The only way that we have what we have here is because we actually brought a container over from the States and we were able to purchase. So I have purchasing power at Clark. But also one of the things so there's a church in Texas called Bentry Church, and they're one of our customers. And I was talking to the tech director, and he happened to have he had 6 PCM 900s. I think you understand, Blake. And
yeah, personal computers in from the 900s era.
These are in-ear monitored, and they never took advantage of the rebate that Shure had when the FCC stole frequencies. So they donated them to us. I have a friend who donated 6 channels of Shure UR4Ds. microphones. Those are if there are wireless stuff that you can't use and you haven't sold and you can't sell, those are things. My dream is to figure out how to get some of this equipment, because the churches here are just hurting for equipment, and they have incredible worship teams, but they have horrible everything else, and so things don't get translated as well.
Okay, I'm throwing down on the podcast right now that we're going to figure out how to partner with you and others around the world to get some of this gear that churches simply are just sitting on into the hands of ministries and missions in other countries. And I know the logistical problem is how do we get it there, but we want to work with you, Wally, to figure out how can we literally get stuff over to Uganda, make it easy for churches to say like, sweet, I'll drop all this stuff off at a container, wherever it is.
I was just about to say, we ship all over the world. Do we not ship to Uganda though?
It's just very expensive to ship anything to Uganda.
Yeah, I mean, the way that we do things like that is there are always people coming back and forth, and they can bring equipment.
Oh, okay. So like someone's carry-on, something like that?
But
the first time I came here, I brought a mixer, a projector, a screen, that's how the first ones got here. So there are logistics. And then if we open this up and let people know that we're looking to try to do this, there are companies and ministries that come over and bring containers. If we can get some space on a container, things like that. There's all sorts of ways, but primarily it's people coming over.
Well, heck, if you can get us the container, I'm sure we can get us, or like if you know of some people that we could talk to about containers, I'm sure we have got tons of gear that we could do. Wow.
Yeah. And we, just logistically speaking, we say no to gear a lot at churches because we simply don't have the space or resources to handle it. Like we handle as much as we can, but it is totally our heart and passion of like, how can we, all the rest of this gear that would be amazing at a church in Africa or a church in South America, like how can we get it onto a container that we know will get to the right place?
Yeah. I mean, if we knew we were regularly putting gear on a container and it was going over, we could say yes a lot more to stuff that literally would get thrown away in America. Like the church, like this, like there's gear where they're like, we're going to pitch it and we're like, we don't have space or we can't resell it. But I mean, oh my gosh. Like,
yeah. So Blake at churchgear.com.
Oh boy. Yes. No, we have our company retreat coming up in a couple of weeks. This would be a really big idea to talk about because it's been a big mission of ours for a long time of like, your dream board of, okay, how do we start giving away gear that we can't sell and that churches want to give us that we wouldn't sell either. How do we get it back to ministries? This would be amazing.
Yeah, it would be great. And I would be more than happy to spend my time trying to figure out things. And I'll be back in the States at Christmas time. So if there's anything, I can bring it back.
I'm sure we could load you up at Christmas. Oh,
and I'll actually probably be up your guys' way too. So.
You can be Santa at Christmas. I'm serious. Yeah, like let's communicate. I'm sure we could get you some stuff at Christmas time. This is awesome. Okay. Wally, I got another question for you. And the reason I was jumping to this, what might have felt a little prematurely, is I want to give you a chance to have multiple if you have them. Because, between your time at Saddleback at a mega church, working with so many other smaller churches with Clark, I feel like you have really, truly seen the full gambit of production gear. So we always end our episodes with a tech takeaway and wanted to give you a chance if you had, if you have just one, that's okay. But if you've got a couple, that's even like really awesome of just the things you would see all the time working with the smaller churches of like, I learned this one tip I started giving them and it really changed the way they looked at gear or bought gear, how it helped them with their production gear.
Well, one of the things, and I'm kind of nerdy in this way, when I get a piece of gear, I read the manual. Imagine that.
Do you advise that for all gear?
I do advise that because I still look at manuals and I still learn, I can do that. always, my other takeaway is that you never stop learning. I tell my production team, and this is the truth, guys. I literally learn something every time I sit down at the console. There is something I have a deep foundation, so I can try things maybe the new guys can't. But I'm always learning. I'm when it comes to gear, I keep up. We, as Toby knows, you have to keep up with the gear because it changes daily. And I'm definitely a gear nerd. My wife calls it gear lust. And
it's a real thing.
There are some actual saucy Instagram hashtags about gear, of which I will not repeat on this, but like there is the love of gear is deep.
Yeah. Yes, it is. And there is, if I see a well-wired rack, man, that's a beautiful, beautiful art, which Clark was incredible at.
I did rack fabrication for like a year when I was 18 years old, and it was an absolute art. You just have wires, going in very straight lines and curved at their axle. It's just like everything falling into place. Yeah.
You have to show Blake some pictures.
That's right.
Toby just did a literal shiver right there, thinking back to that.
That's right.
Well, Wally, what plugs can we do for you, man? I mean, what would you like, or do you want people to reach out to you on socials? Is there anything you'd like to plug?
Yeah, I mean, it's check out Amazima.org. Check it out, see what we're doing over here. There are always needs here. If anybody has any questions of me, will you put my email or something on there?
If you want, I'll put it on there.
Oh, no, absolutely. We'll put the Amazima email on there. And if anybody wants to learn about what we're doing here, maybe there's some opportunity. We're always looking for teachers and things like that. And if anybody, shameless plug, if anybody's interested in support, we raise our own support here. We don't get paid to be here. And if they want, we won't put any links for that, but if they want to ask me about it, but I'm open to let people know what's happening here because they'll get just as excited as I am because it's an amazing thing that's happening. The average age in Uganda is 15 and a half years old. That means we can change a generation.
Wow.
And that's what one of the goals of Amazima is.
Yeah, y'all are really doing a lot of great work, which is why we were like, we've got to have Wally on the podcast. We saw everything you were up to, especially the career arc. We were like, what a fascinating story his life has taken and where he's at. So, and we appreciate you coming on, and we appreciate all the great work you're doing there.
Well, thank you. I appreciate you having me on. I look forward to listening. I've been listening to all your podcasts. So,
why? Thank you. You just made my day.
Yeah. I love the five lives thing. I think that's great. It was hard for me to come up with them because I have many.
Because you're so honest.
Well, whenever you sent yours, I was super thrilled. Like when those come in right before we're putting the outline together, I was like, I can kind of tell how jazzed someone is to be on or not. And yours were so good. I was like, Toby, this is going to be a good episode.
I thought of some afterwards. Oh, I should have put that on there.
Well, for the next time we have you on, you'll already have a head start.
Okay, exactly. That sounds good.
Thanks for listening. And hey, congratulations on surviving Sunday. If you happen to make it through next Sunday as well, join us again for your weekly Tech Breather.
Blake, are you just like doing the happy dance because Wally said he saw things on your Instagram?
It does remind me that my duty to be smart about what I post is important.
Don't put your long calls on Instagram.
And not even the short calls. But if I was going to make a long call, I'd want to be entertained. And I'd want to be entertained by the Church Gear podcast in that long call. Wouldn't you?
Definitely. And so what would I do about that?
Well, see, how would you know about it? How would you know about the Church Gear podcast for your long call if your friend hasn't shared it with you?
Oh, good point.
Yeah, so, you need to love your friend on their long call and, don't love them in person. Just text them a link to this podcast and say, this is for your next long call.
And of course, the thing I've wanted to say since the moment we hit record on this episode, Wally.